Welcome back to the shop. I'm Kirk Anderson. Now this week's video, I'm going to talk about glue and most of the glues that you might find in most wood shops. Now the first glue that I'm going to talk about is the #1 glue used by woodworkers, PVA, or polyvinyl acetate. Now right now, probably the best-selling PVA glue is Titebond, and they have 3 types. Of course, Titebond 1, Titebond 2, and Titebond 3. Now Titebond 1 is their original glue, and it is a very good glue. But the work time isn't as long as Titebond 2 or 3, and it has no water resistance whatsoever. Now Titebond 2 is almost similar to Titebond 1, except that it's water resistant. And then you have Titebond 3, which is supposedly waterproof. Now whenever I'm building anything that's going to be in a moist environment, I'll always use the Titebond 3. But probably 70-80% of the projects I make, I use Titebond 2, which is why I buy it in a gallon jug. And in applying any PVA glue, you just spread out a nice bead, you spread it out to a thin film, and then clamp the pieces together. Now the next glue I'm going to talk about is hide glue. And just as the name says, it's made out of animal hide. Now this was the go-to glue before PVA glue came out. And it is still widely used with traditional woodworkers and especially instrument makers like guitars. Now originally, hide glue only came in like a crystallized form, and you had to melt it down in your shop. And it has a very short work time, only a few minutes. Now the new liquid hide glue has a much longer work time, and since you don't have to melt it down, it's much easier to use. Now the main reason why this is used by like instrument makers making guitars is hide glue doesn't dry to rock solid like PVA glue does. In a hide glue joint, if you heat it up, you can pull the joint apart without destroying the wood, which is totally impossible with PVA glue. If you try to tear apart a joint that's done with PVA glue, you're going to take some of the wood with you. Now the next glue to talk about is CA glue or super glue or cyanocrylate. Now some people call this instant glue. It's not quite instant. You have a little bit of work time. But if you use the activator, then it will be instant. When you use the activator, you put the CA glue on one piece, you spray the activator on another piece. When you put it together, you are not taking them apart. In the shop, I use CA glue for really small parts. Now really one of the main things that I use it for is if I'm putting small hardware pieces in, like hinges or things like that. I'll put a dab of the CA glue in the pre-drilled hole and then drive the screw in. That's just to ensure that it will hold when you're using such a small screw. Now next on the list is polyurethane. Now most people in North America know this as the brand name Gorilla Glue, but it's been around a little bit longer than Gorilla Glue. One of the properties that's excellent with polyurethane is that you can put 2 pieces of different types of material together with polyurethane glue, which you cannot do with PVA glue or even hide glue. Now another thing about polyurethane is when you put pieces together, you need to make sure that you wet the pieces first. And then they need to be clamped. If you don't clamp pieces with polyurethane glue, it's just not going to have that great of a hold. And another issue with polyurethane is that when it cures, it foams up. So sometimes you might have to do a little bit of cleanup after the glue sets. But that's real easy to do. All you really need is a utility knife and cut the squeeze out away. Now next on the list is epoxy. Now epoxy is a 2-part formula that you have to mix yourself. Part A would be the resin, and then part B would be the hardener. And most epoxies that you get are a 1-to-1 mixture, 1 part of each. Now there are some out there that you may need like 1.5 or 2 parts of one. Just read the instructions of the particular epoxy that you're using. Now there again, depending on the epoxy you're using, you may have a short work time, like about 5 minutes, or you could have up to about 20 minutes to work with it. Now there again with epoxy, you can join two different types of materials, like let's say wood and metal, and it will also fill in any voids that are present. And epoxy can be sanded once it is dried and then painted. Next is contact cement. Now in a regular workshop, contact cement use is very limited. Probably one of the biggest uses that contact cement is used for in a wood shop is for putting on edge banding or putting down, vinyl if you're making a countertop or something like that. But you can also run across other uses for it. Now for contact cement, basically what you do is you put the cement on both pieces, you let it dry, and then you put the pieces together. And once they touch each other, they will adhere to each other. Thus the name contact. Once contact is made, it is very hard or impossible to pull it apart. And now the last glue that I'm going to talk about is spray adhesive. Now spray adhesive is very similar to a contact cement. If you apply it to both pieces and let it dry, you stick it together and it's going to adhere. But also if you just apply it to one piece, then it's more of a temporary hold. Now when it comes to spray adhesives, the main thing that I use it for in my shop is like you take a pattern and you spray it onto the pattern and then put the pattern onto the piece of wood. That's so you can use the bandsaw or a jigsaw and cut out the piece. Well, that does it for this video on glues. I hope you were stuck in your seat for the excitement in this video and that you got something out of it. And if you would, give the video a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And as always, all you woodworkers out there, just get out there and cut some wood.